This episode of DeviceTalks Weekly Podcast is brought to you by DeviceTalks Tuesdays. Join us this Tuesday. You'll hear from our friends at Finnegan. We'll be talking about the best way to protect your AI intellectual property. Go to devicetalks.com to register. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Hey everyone, this is Tom Salemi. Welcome back to the DeviceTalks Weekly Podcast. It's great to have you here. This podcast is huge. I started off with a smaller podcast. I added an element to it that I thought was really cool. And then I had another element I had to add and make it even bigger. So it's a big podcast. I hope you'll enjoy it. We're really looking at many different aspects of robotic surgery and digital surgery. We'll kick off with an interview with Anthony Fernando. He is the CEO of Asensus, of course, formerly Transenterix. Later on, we'll hear from Todd Usen. He is the CEO of Active Surgical, which is not a robotics company, but it's certainly a really cool digital surgery company. And we'll wrap it up at the end with a great sit down with Maurice Ferre. He is, of course, the former CEO and founder of MAKO Surgical. He's now chairman of Memix. We talked a bit about Memix, but we also talked about the deal to sell MAKO to Stryker and got Maurice's take on the state of robotics. He says what he thinks. It's really a very, very good interview. So I was grateful to have Maurice join us. In between all of that, we'll have a lot of great Newmarkers newsmakers. We'll have some surgical robot Jeopardy for you with our contestants, Chris Newmarker and Sean Hooley of Mass Device. And we'll also have some great content from our friends at Finnegan, PSN Labs, and Pack World USA. Very grateful there for their support of the podcast. Before we get into this week's episode, I did want to tell you we are on Clubhouse. I will be holding a session on Monday at 5:30 p.m. called Device Walk and Talks. I will be taking a walk. I'll have Clubhouse with me, and we'll talk about the podcast episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the interviews, and if you have any questions, be happy to answer them, but I really would love to hear from you. Eventually, we'd like to turn this into sort of another interview opportunity, but for now, it's sort of a visit with Device Talks listeners, and would love to gain your insight. So 5:30 p.m. on Mondays. And then Friday at noon, you can also find us. We'll have Mass Devices, Newmarkers, Newsmakers. Chris and I will be on there with some of our friends from the Medtech industry to talk about the news of the week. So if you're not on Clubhouse yet, check it out. Check out the app. If you are in Clubhouse, try to find us. We will, again, be meeting 5:30 p.m. Eastern for Device Walk and Talks. And then noon on Friday, we will be meeting for Mass Devices, Newmarkers, Newsmakers. So Monday, 5:30 p.m., Friday at noon. Now, without any further talk about clubhouses and or whatnot, it's great to bring in my podcast partners, plural, Chris Newmarker, the executive editor of Mass Device, and Sean Hooley, associate editor of the same site. How are you, gentlemen? Welcome to the podcast.
Doing good.
Good to be here, Tom. I have an important question, though. So, as far as breakfast meats go, I mean, are you more for like sausage or bacon?
We're not going to go the pumpkin sausage route again, are we, Chris? I think we exhausted that topic.
No, don't bring that up anymore. No.
All right. Sorry. I know some people are still scarred by that. I am a sausage man. I like a good piece of bacon as much as, well, I don't know how you guys are the next guys, so maybe you like them more than I do. But if I had to choose sausage to bacon, I'm definitely taking more sausage than bacon.
I was asking the question because obviously the Alexa in our house overhears me and my wife discussing breakfast in the morning and like what we're going to eat. And my Pandora played an ad for Johnsonville breakfast sausage strips.
What is that about?
That sounds like bacon.
That sounds
sausage stretched into bacon. Something
that is unholy, Chris Newmarker.
I know, right? I mean,
cats and dogs sleeping together. You cannot have that. Can't have a sausage strip. That's ridiculous. Sean Hooley, where do you fall on this important issue?
I tend to lean sausage, I think, especially for like a breakfast sandwich. You want a little bit more, the circular patty covers the whole sandwich. You want something in every bite.
Right.
But nothing against bacon.
I'm all for a good BLT. Yeah, and absolutely, a breakfast sandwich, like a good sausage patty's good. But yeah, I was just a little bit, when I heard that, I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, they're like, we've solved the problem. No, you haven't.
Still a debate.
Still a debate. It goes on.
No one's putting sausage bits on their salads either. I think that would be a little gross. So everything has its place. I'm glad you didn't
try to throw in a curveball and say ham or something.
I do like a good ham too. I'll break this debate down even further. Let's just look at the bacon universe. Crispy or chewy?
Crispy or chewy?
The debate in my house, Sean, crispy or chewy, your bacon?
If not to cop out here, but a real happy medium,
Moderate, I see.
There's a way to get both.
I'd say just however it turns out in my oven, because I don't like to do it on the stovetop because it makes the whole house smell like bacon.
That's what you want. You want the house to smell like bacon. That's the whole point of bacon.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. It's like, it's the morning. I got cooking some bacon.
Oh, all right. Now I'm hungry.
Take a break now for Tom to get a BLT.
Chris Newmarker, let's roll him in. Let's roll in this week's Newmarker's
Newsmakers of the week. Well, number 5, we actually, this was a 2-for-1, a BOGO deal from you, Tom. We had 2 stories from you off your recent interview on this podcast with Medtronic CEO Jeff Martha, and the full stories are on Mass Device's sister site, Medical Design Outsourcing. But we've got a whole thing with you, just like what you got from Martha about like how Medtronic is changing this huge reorganization that they're doing, and we also have a story out of that interview of like 5 reasons that Jeff Martha is optimistic about the future of Medtronic, and actually the 5 reasons he's optimistic about the future story has been just getting a ton of attention on LinkedIn in the past days. So yeah, just some great stories here from you.
Well, it was a great interview. I won't get into it deeply because I'm sure most of our people heard it last week. But if you haven't, please go check it out. It's last week's. We had Duke Rolene and Jeff Martha on the program, which was super duper. Obviously one of our better performing podcasts. All right, Chris Newmarker, rolling number 4.
So number 4 on the list is Hillrom executives are trying to pull the plug on their planned $375 million purchase of Bardy Diagnostics. And Bardy Diagnostics, if you don't know about the company, they make the Carnation ambulatory monitor or CAM patch. This is one of these like really interesting technologies, for external EKG monitoring that could, supplant these traditional holder monitors that have been used, up until now a lot. But, one hitch with the technology is that there's a regional Medicare administrator, Novitas, that has, published like big rate cuts for this area, and Hillrom said because of those rate cuts, they feel that a material adverse, this was a material adverse effect on the deal. And Barty is actually suing Hillrom in Delaware to make them move forward with the merger, saying they're kind of just using this reimbursement decision as a pretense. And it's worth mentioning that, just this week as well, Boston Scientific closed on its acquisition of Preventive Solutions, similar type of technology for remote monitoring of, for cardiac arrhythmias. And, Philips last month completed its purchase of BioTelemetry. So other big companies have proceeded with deals like acquiring in this space, but, Hillrom's trying to get out of one of those deals.
You don't see that happen very often with the deal going that way. So see how that plays out. Now it's time for our first keynote conversation. We're going to hear from Anthony Fernando, the CEO of Asensus. But first, a message from Brandon Hoser of PacWorld USA.
PacWorld USA is a leading manufacturer of precision-controlled, validatable heat sealing equipment. Our TOS heat sealing technology is an advanced form of impulse heat sealing, which pairs well with medical device, pharmaceutical, and biotech applications. With over 25 years of manufacturing equipment for the life science industries, PacWorld has supplied equipment for typical applications such as sealing pouches made from poly, foil, or Tyvek materials. Our machines are also capable of heat sealing fluoropolymer materials requiring higher temperatures approaching or north of 300 degrees Celsius like PTFE, PFA, and FEP. Beyond sterile barrier packaging, PacWorld equipment is used in the creation of personal protective equipment, implanted medical devices, and more. PacWorld is located in the Mid-Atlantic region of the United States, calling Nazareth, Pennsylvania its home. Although considered a small business, our machines have been installed in clean rooms around the world, including Europe, Americas, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific regions. We pride ourselves with great customer service. A real live person answers incoming calls, so automated directories can be avoided. We welcome a conversation about heat sealing projects. Please reach out when the need arises.
Next week, we'll hear more about the technology behind PacWorld's medical heat sealing equipment. For more information, go to pacworldusa.com. Oh, Anthony Fernando, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be here.
Before we get into the business, I always love to know how folks found their way to where they are. I know you're really an engineer by training. I don't know if you always had intention on finding your way to Medtech, or if you were more found your way through the tech side of Medtech, maybe less the med and more the tech.
Yeah, Tom. So actually, it was really tech. Right after graduate school, I actually got into robotics. I was doing robotics for nuclear waste handling, working for the U.S. government. And then that kind of led me down a path to go into use of robotics in the pharmaceutical industry, doing pharmaceutical quality control and R&D related work. And then that kind of caught my interest in, maybe adjacent field, which was medtech, and kind of trying to get closer to surgeons and hospitals and patients. And I kind of then made my way into medtech probably 15 years ago, and been enjoying every minute of it.
You had found your way into medtech. I know you had worked, you joined Stryker, I believe, in 2013, which is roughly when they bought MAKO. Was there a connection between the acquisition and your joining, or were you were you involved in that transaction at all somehow?
Yeah, I was involved in that post-transaction because I was really focused more on the international innovation and emerging market technology portfolio based out of Singapore. Mm-hmm. So I had Stryker has a very large R&D presence in Asia. So once the robotics acquisition took place with MAKO, my team ended up providing support to the global organization, with software related work. So I'm very, very familiar with that, but that was mostly post-transaction support.
So is that how you came to become involved with surgical robotics?
Yeah, I would say that was the first, from a surgery point of view, that was the first exposure to the surgical robotics, but the whole concept of robotics and automated systems and software, hardware, that's been in the works for many years. But that was the first exposure, and then came Transenterix.
How did you come to join Transenterix?
So I joined Transenterix at the time we were doing the acquisition of the Italian company SoFar, where Senhance came in 2015. So I joined at the time and did the acquisition, integrated the companies, and then I have been kind of the person who has owned that technology from the very first day since we acquired it. And then we went through all the FDA processes and scaling up manufacturing, and then moved on. In 2018, we acquired MST Technologies. That's another acquisition that I led for the company, and that's when the digital journey began. So now we are on the digital journey, and we kind of want to put it all together and take it up to the next level to provide a really elegant, performance solution, leveraging robotics, leveraging digital technology, to help improve surgeons, elevating surgeons' performance, and as a result, getting better outcomes.
So you were COO in June of 2017. You became CEO in November 2019. Talk to me about what the state of the company was and the surgical system was when you took over. How would you describe the company's status at that time?
Yeah, so I would say at the time, we had very good technology, and I had obviously really good knowledge and background of it because doing the integration. And also we didn't quite have a digital strategy per se. And then also it was pretty clear that we needed to focus on market development to gain more experience and generate data and convince our future customers. So that was kind of the state of the company. We had a good product, but the world didn't know what we had. And, we were being second guessed by we present cost data and we would get pushback saying, is that true? And can you show evidence? So we didn't quite have proper clinical evidence and peer-reviewed journals and publications. So that's the reason. That's kind of why that was the state when I took over the company, and that's kind of what we've been focusing on since.
So the stock price isn't necessarily the best measure of what's going on in a company, but it's one that is on the forefront. It's one that we see. And in 2018, Transenterix stock was trading for over 80. It took a precipitous decline in 2019. Now you're in the single digits. You're inching your way back up. What was the cause of that steep decline? Was there a single event? Was there something that occurred to cause that?
I think I wouldn't say it was a single event. It was multiple events that kind of came together. In 2018 we did almost 24 million in revenue, and in 2017 we did about 6 or 7 million. So it was pretty significant growth in terms of revenue. So I think there was an expectation in 19 that we would continue to grow at that click in terms of revenue. And that we were not able to realize. So that was so that was one element that played into the stock. And second was cash. Our cash runway was shortening because we were really focused on trying to commercialize the product in all geographies. So we kind of burned through cash as well at the time. So the balance sheet being relatively weak and not being able to post revenue to hit the street's expectations, I mean, those two combined, it really led to the decline in the stock price and the valuation.
What's it like taking over a company where you're already there? You're at the company. You're in a senior position. You're taking over a company that needs some redirection. Is it easier than coming into a fresh situation where you were not part of the story previously, or is it more challenging because you know the people, sort of the systems, you were part of some of the decisions that went on before? Yeah. I'm curious as to what it's like to take over a company in that state.
I wouldn't say it was easy because, the entire external, whether it's outward, investor related matters, that was not something that I had focused on prior to taking on the role. The prior CEO and CFO primarily managed that. But the positive thing was really the team and the technology. Mm-hmm. I was very familiar with the technology, knew it very intimately. And also the team, majority of the team, especially the team outside the US, I was primarily responsible for building that entire organization. So very, very familiar, really good familiarity with the team. So knowing the team and the technology, that gave me some, very high level of confidence about what we have and what we can actually accomplish. So that was done. And then, we had a very supportive board who agreed with the, change of strategy to focus on market development and really do that first as a first step before we think about full-fledged commercial efforts. So the board was aligned. So given those two, I kind of felt, pretty comfortable taking on the role at that time.
Transenterix has gone through, I think probably when you came on board or just prior, it had already sort of pivoted in one direction with the acquisition of the acquisition of the Italian company. So we've got a good history of being able to sort of move to where the puck will be. So where are you now? What is different from what you're offering now than what was being offered when you took over?
So, Tom, I think kind of going to take a step back to kind of come to your question.
Sure.
When you think about Senhance, we've had this platform, which we are calling a digital laparoscopy platform, because our solution primarily focuses on providing technology to the laparoscopic surgeon in a very cost-effective manner. So that we have established, and we have a very good track record of being able to deliver safe, effective, cost-effective surgery. And then when we started introducing all the digital elements to it, augmented intelligence and machine learning, which we got FDA approval in 2020, and earlier this year we got the CE mark for that technology as well. There was not a whole lot of recognition for who we were, because we were just simply getting compared to another robotics play and another robotics company. But we were building technologies and solutions really for the future, way beyond robotics. So we recognized early on saying, hey, robotics is just one element of the solution. And there are multiple other elements that need to come to play. So that was the reason why we wanted to make sure that we rebrand and create this new category called digital, building on digital laparoscopy, and really talking about performance-guided surgery is to try to enable us to communicate better and be able to make the case for why we are different in terms of what we offer. Yes, we offer robotic technology, that's at the core, but what's really going to help surgeons and improve outcomes is the digital element. That's what we see as the future. So we are building the future now without getting any recognition. So that was the reason why we thought this was the time to do it. We continue to perform digital laparoscopy, but at the same time, we are very aggressively building our digital portfolio in terms of augmented intelligence, machine learning, trying to perform, the goal, we want to be able to learn good surgery and best practices from everywhere and be able to use it anywhere, so that we can be predictive in terms of how what good looks like in terms of an outcome, and reduce variability. And if you reduce variability, you can contain cost further in surgery. So that's really the change. It's not going after a totally new product. It's basically trying to get recognition for what we do, and also be even more aggressive on the digital side of the technology front, and be able to offer solutions there.
So what are the components of your digital elements? Because we hear the term digital surgery now. It seems as if there's a move industry-wide to kind of move off robotics, and really, as you said, sort of explain that robotics is a part of it, but it's not the whole thing. What does your digital platform consist of? What tech and services does your digital platform offer?
So there are three elements, Tom. There's a pre-op element that we are calling intelligent preparation, and then an intra-op segment that we are calling perceptive real-time guidance, and a post-operative segment that we are calling performance analytics. So currently, as we stand today, we are initially focusing on the intra-op element. We have this system that we launched called the Intelligent Surgical Unit, or the ISU, that can interpret the surgical image real time. So it can identify instruments, and it knows where the surgeon is going with the instrument. So it's starting to collect data now, and it knows what the surgeon is looking at and what the surgeon is doing. So we are starting with the intra-op piece, which we already have it in the market now, and now we are building kind of the database over time in order to be able to add further augmented intelligence capabilities. And then in parallel, we also are working on some solutions for the pre-operative or intelligent preparation side of things, so that knowing the patient's anatomy and the procedure that you're planning to do, what is the best way to perform the surgery? How do we position the equipment to get the best outcome, knowing the surgeon's techniques, etc., so we can be better prepared. So that's where we are currently, and as we build this database of surgical data, surgical analytics, now we will be able to go and do the performance analytics post-op, and say this is how the surgery was performed, this is what the time looks like, this was how many moves the surgeon had to make in order to do this, and also be able to say, what does good look like, and be able to compare and then improve from there. So we're kind of already in doing some of this work, and we're just continuing to build upon what we are doing to take it really to the next level.
Who is the customer for that post-operative surgery sort of analysis of a surgery? Is it the surgeon that wants to get better? Is it the hospital that's looking for billing? Is it some other administrator? Who is finding that element, or do you anticipate will find that element most compelling?
So there's two cohorts. One is definitely the surgeon, because the surgeon obviously wants to do better and improve and try to be consistent as well, right? If you can deliver consistent. So surgeons definitely the primary target. And the second is probably, the hospital administration, whether it's the, OR manager trying to better schedule patients and know from history where they stand, or from a hospital administrator, because when a complication happens, that significantly impacts the P&L of a hospital. So how do you eliminate a complication? And the only way to eliminate a complication is by being able to predictively deliver an outcome. And that's kind of what these analytics will perform, will demonstrate what are, trying to help figure out what are the cause and effect of certain complications, and then be able to say, how do you prevent those complications? Is it a skill? Is it just a simple unknown of the patient, or is it simply the patient had other chronic ailments that kind of contributed to that poor outcome? So we'll be able to kind of, the administration will be able to clearly dissect the data to better understand where they need to improve and get better as an organization.
I've talked with a number of companies selling digital surgery systems or digital robotics or surgical robotic systems. And one of the challenges, of course, especially in this time of COVID, and I'd like to learn more broadly how COVID has impacted what you're doing. How have you been able to? Have you had any trouble placing systems, because hospitals seem to are having a tougher time with elective surgery, of course, under budget constraints? Have you had to alter the way you're selling these and putting these into hospitals or financing? What has your response been to sort of the new challenges presented by COVID?
So, Tom, before COVID hit, as part of our market development strategy in the fourth quarter, we moved to an operating lease model. And this was basically, we placed the system and we agreed to a monthly fee that includes a certain number of procedures. So we already moved to that business model in the fourth quarter of 2019. So as a result, we didn't run into any capital issues during 2020, and we ended up placing 10 systems despite COVID. We placed 3 in Japan, 3 in the US, and 4 in Europe under this operating leasing program. So we were kind of slightly ahead of the COVID challenges when it came to placing systems. So we didn't go into that, we didn't hit that challenge. However, we learned a lot. I think we now know that using that model was very appealing to the hospitals that we worked with. So that's something that we will continue to think about, saying how do we, continue to expand and grow that kind of a business model, moving forward. It is an option.
And we had Joe Mullings on the show a month ago or so, and he had mentioned that you had done an installation, I think, in Japan, completely remotely. Is that something you can talk about?
Yeah, sure. So I think that was, really to your previous question as well. What was kind of the challenges getting. Other than placing the system, getting the surgeons trained that's kind of what got in the way for us. Is because we couldn't travel, we couldn't send our trainers, and we only had training facility in the US and in Italy. So in Japan, we had interest. So that's kind of why we opened up a training center. Fortunately, we had 2 very well-trained surgeons in Japan already because we had a system there. So we established a training center, then we worked with those surgeons, and our trainers worked remotely, working with those surgeons and the new hospitals, and we got additional surgeons trained to get the new sites up and running. So we were supporting the surgeons on the ground and the new surgeons we were bringing on board. So that's kind of how we evolved into creating this remote solution in order for us to be able to see what's happening in the OR, and we can help get them up to speed as quickly as possible. So that's something positive that came out of this pandemic, is we kind of moved to how we enable surgical training, surgical case observations, additional mentoring, etc., through this remote device that we worked on and brought to life.
I watched a recent presentation of yours, which seems to speak to your interest in the laparoscopic market. It's a larger market, I think, for procedures. But your future, Asensus' future, is it laparoscopic only, or you also see opportunities in open surgery as well? Tell me your strategy there, and what does the next couple of years look like for you in that regard?
So we are open to both sides of it, but I think laparoscopy, given the underpenetrated nature of laparoscopy, that will continue to be one of our primary focus areas. But at the same time, all the solutions that we are continuing to evolve and create, we are going to leave that door open as well, because that's something that we can also cater to. Today, our approach is primarily laparoscopic technique. However, the cost per procedure, we are equivalent to laparoscopy today, or very close to it. So we are already at the low per procedure cost. So starting from there and being able to perform minimally invasive surgery at a very low cost point and be able to change the technique. So that's something we will leave that door open and continue to push that way. But the technology that we have today only caters to laparoscopy. But we are not close to the idea of working on open surgery.
Well, I think, Fernando, I appreciate your joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be here, and thanks for your time.
All right, Chris Newmarker, let's roll on with the Newmarker's Newsmakers. What is number 3?
Number 3 originally ran on another of our sister sites, Drug Discovery and Development, and this is from our pharma editor, Brian Bunce. And it's kind of like talking about how there have been, a few Bell's palsy cases in the phase 3 trials for COVID-19 vaccines. There were 2 recipients in the J&J phase 3 trial that developed Bell's palsy. Two people in the placebo group did as well. And with the Moderna trial, there were 3 recipients that developed it, and just 1 in the placebo group, and that caused FDA and CDC to say they're going to be monitoring the Pfizer and the Moderna trials going forward for more Bell's palsy. So, and it's worth mentioning too. I mean, there are tens of thousands of volunteers in these trials, but it's just mentioning just like one thing that they're going to be watching for, going forward with the vaccines. There's just so much hope around the vaccines. The regulatory authorities say these are really good, effective vaccines, but they're also experimental. So we're just going to be monitoring them to make sure we don't have any problems cropping up.
Great point. And in other vaccine news, I kindly asked if Sean's parents have been vaccinated yet, and I learned that they're roughly my age. So great.
Sorry, it's not my fault, but sorry.
Anyway, and I have not been vaccinated yet.
It just means you have experience and wisdom, Tom.
That's right, and I'm sharing it all with our listeners. This is the culmination of decades of experience. Yikes. Well, interesting news about the vaccine. What is our number 2 item on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list, Chris?
Well, number 2 on the list, we've got Boston Scientific is going to acquire the Luminous surgical business for nearly $1.1 billion. That's a billion with a B. And they'll be buying this from affiliate of Bearing Private Equity Asia. Just another major Medtech M&A deal going down. Luminous, which is based in Israel, has a surgical portfolio that includes laser systems, fibers, and accessories for urology. They've got their proprietary Moses technology for managing patients with kidney stones. We've been talking about this for the last month or so, that coming out of this pandemic, that we'd be seeing a real spate of M&As, and that's exactly what's happening.
That's right. Nostradamus, baby. You predicted it.
Woo!
You said it in December. Hashtag trademark copyright Nostradamus.
Nostradamus.
Well, Chris Newmarket, let's bring in number one, and I think we'll sense a trend in who is writing top stories here at Mass Device.
Yeah, that's right. Number one, another story from Sean. It's we've got FDA approving what they're saying is the first robot-assisted system for transvaginal hysterectomy. Memix Innovative Surgery's a Hominis system, and this transvaginal approach requires fewer incisions on the abdomen compared to the traditional laproscopic hysterectomy. But I mean, Sean, you're kind of mentioning everything we post on Mass Device that says robot assistant, and right now it seems to be doing really well.
Definitely, yeah. And this says robot assisted. There's video cameras involved. It obviously creates a different pathway to performing the surgery with less abdominal incisions, which I believe is kind of a big deal in that procedure. And then you get, they said that all 30 procedures that have been performed were successfully completed with no conversions to the other approach, which requires more incisions on the abdomen. So altogether, it seems like it's a step forward in the procedure and in the space. And like you said, anytime robots attached, people want to read about it.
Now it's time for our second keynote conversation. We're going to talk to Todd Usen. He's the CEO of Active Surgical, a very cool company. But first, I want to reintroduce you to Matthew Heidecker. He's a vice president at PSN Labs. We're going to talk about PSN's various offerings. So Matthew, I understand PSN Labs does more than just labs. Labs is in the name, but what else do you do?
We do. We are a diverse business which maintains 3 unique business sectors. We have an engineering services team, which covers nearly every aspect of medical device design and development, including structural analysis and analysis for design for manufacturability. We have a processing lab, which includes a white room, clean room for device molding or component molding or assembly. And we have a test lab that's ISO IEC 17025-2017 certified, which allows us to test medical devices for critical components to regulatory submissions. With those structures being under one roof, it provides us with a competitive advantage for our customers because normally they're having to contract with several different companies, which increases the amount of time it takes to start a regulatory submission. By having all of these businesses under one roof, it allows us to be a more effective resource for them as they develop new and novel devices for the industry.
Ventilators, of course, have been an important issue. What kind of work do you do there?
We are one of 6 companies, I believe, in the United States that is certified to test ventilators and breathing products according to ISO 18562, which looks at the biocompatibility evaluation of breathing gas pathways in healthcare applications. With our engineering background, we have developed a unique test setup to PSN, which has been referred to by some of our customers as a best-in-class approach to this standard, where we've developed clinically relevant test setups through isolation of variables. A good example of this is volatile organic compound testing. VOCs are present in the atmosphere. They're present in every building, and isolating them when you have to measure down to the part per billion level and report that is difficult. So by engineering a unique solution through the integration of our engineering services group and our testing lab, we've developed a best-in-class approach to testing these devices to ensure that when our customers are working to submit for regulatory approval, we've done our due diligence to ensure that they're safe for patient use. And that's coupling with our in-house toxicology capabilities and biocompatibility capabilities, along with the testing and also the engineering of the devices.
Tune in next week. We'll have another episode of the 2-Minute Detox with PSN Labs. For more information, go to psnlabs.com. Well, Todd Usen, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Tom.
I'm eager to learn about Active Surgical. It's I think its name actually is very descriptive of what it does. I'm quite impressed with the tech, so can't wait to learn more. But I wanted to find out a bit about your path. I often ask folks how they found their way into the medtech industry. What was your entry point? Well,
I've been in medtech for a long time, and my entry point into medtech was right out of college, actually, I had the opportunity to interview. I was a business major in college, and I interviewed with what was then known as Kendall Healthcare. And Kendall, which is now Medtronic, it became Tyco and Covidien, and I was part of a college recruiting program.
That's right.
And I was blessed to get the opportunity, and I've never looked back. And I've spent my life in large companies. So I'm not your traditional startup CEO, and I'm not these brilliant young engineer founders. I'm neither young, brilliant, or an engineer. So
neither am I. We'll get along great.
It's been quite a run, and really enjoyed it.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, yeah, you were previously at Olympus. Before that, you were at Smith & Nephew. Before that, you were at Boston Scientific. So you were a big company guy. What was it that caused you to see an opportunity? Why did you become a startup CEO?
Well, it's interesting. When I wasn't looking to become a startup CEO necessarily, it's the technology drew me in. I loved my time at Boston Scientific and Smith & Nephew and Olympus. And, I was groomed to do these opportunities, and I enjoyed being a president of, I had these great big P&Ls, and I realized now I'm coming over and I just have an L, and that's okay. It's just, it was the right time, technology, I did a lot of things, and I learned a great deal at these companies, and the opportunity to see something like Active and the technology that Dr. Peter Kim developed and the team here was something I said, you know what, we can make this special, and I'd love to be part of it.
Just one final question about yourself, and then I do want to learn about the technology, but how hard a decision was it to make that move into startup? What were the pros? What were the cons? How long was each list? And what kind of put you over the top finally? Other than the technology, was there something else?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's just the right time. I mean, the stars aligned. I wasn't looking to make a move to a startup. I wasn't looking to make a move to a large company. It was just, an opportunity comes to you and you listen. And it was almost like I had the chance. I did the others, I was really blessed and honored to be the president of Smith & Nephew and all of orthopedics. I really learned a lot and cut my teeth getting a full opportunity to be president, and then to go to another great company like Olympus. And, we had 6 medical companies there, and we took it to 11 different divisions through collaboration, some adjacencies, and a couple of acquisitions. And that experience was amazing. And to have a real global opportunity, but then this technology is what drew me in, and the people were special. And again, like I said, I wasn't looking to go back and be the guy that goes and creates his own slides,
right?
And all the work. And my wife originally said, "Is this a box you're checking?" And I said, "No, it's not a box I'm checking. I really believe in what this company stands for, and I don't even think the company knows what they stand for yet, in a good way, because this technology can be even more special than I think they think."
It's really incredible. I love these conversations because I just want to know, in running a startup, making the decision as CEO, are you drawing from everything you've learned as a big company executive, or are you finding yourself tapping into parts of your brain that you didn't even know you had?
I think a little bit of both. And, it's easy to say what you think you do well. I have plenty of flaws, and I know that. But one of the things that over the years, I've never let title get to me. I've always been, I believe, at least it's been one of those things on your performance reviews all those years. And even when your performance review was done by CEOs, was, title never affected me. So I loved working with everybody. I love having an open door. And I don't believe title doesn't deserve respect. People deserve respect anyway. So I like being part of the team. Use my title when you need it. So this was an easy adjustment as part of just being part of the team and sitting down with these young, brilliant engineers and working alongside. But absolutely, I don't necessarily know if it's a new part of my brain, but it's a part of my brain that I had to dust off. I'll tell you that, because you do get spoiled in a large company, and not always for the better. But if I needed a presentation, I'd have 15 people presenting me with something within an hour. Now it's, okay, you need a presentation, roll up your sleeves and let's go figure it out with the people and let's go do it. So I think it's just remembering what you hopefully didn't forget and bringing that back. And that's been really exciting.
That's great. Well, let's talk about Active Surgical. It's really an interesting company. I could ask many questions, but why don't you get us started? What is Active Surgical? What is your elevator pitch to folks?
My elevator pitch is we're the computer vision engine in the operating room, applicable to over 55 million procedures today. And we envision a future of collaborative surgery. Our foundational technology, Dr. Peter Kim at Children's National Medical Center, completed the world's first fully autonomous robotic surgery of soft tissue. That's great. We're not building a robot, though, and we're programming off-the-shelf robots, and that's what Dr. Kim did. But with what we can do today is with surgical intelligence, we can power both scopes and robots to see what humans cannot see. And we're basically bringing to life in the operating room things that a surgeon can't see today. And Tom, the reason it means something is that one of the things, I learned a few things early when you said you come to a startup. Is there a real problem where you have some superstar technology? Make sure there's a real problem out there that you're helping. The third leading cause of death in the world is preventable medical errors, of which 26% of those are preventable surgical errors. Wow. And these are patients that didn't go to the operating room because of a terminal disease. They shouldn't have died. They shouldn't have had that problem. It's situational awareness, things a physician couldn't see, key blood flow, key critical structures, artery versus vein, tumor, tissue, what have you. And we're bringing that to life both through science and our proprietary sensing capabilities and what we call intelligent light, as well as through insights through a proprietary algorithm that we have on annotating video, and we can provide real-time AI in the operating room.
So that clarifies one thing. So you are not developing a robotic system. You're not a surgical robotic company in any way.
Yes, and when I first got here, the thought was, well, you should see what we can do with robots. We've completed an autonomous robot, and I'm like, that's great. We go raise $1 billion, and we can go build maybe we build a robot. And the thought was, could we do that? We have a tremendous amount of robotic talent in the organization, Tom. But being in capital side of the business as well as disposables over the years, robotics is going to consolidate like everything else. At the end of the day, there's one giant player right now, and there's a bunch of really talented companies that are going to fall into the mix. And it's going to end up being 3 or 4 companies, and that's it. And the only reason I say that, and it's not like I have some crystal ball, when I look at surgical endoscopy, it's Stryker, Karl Storz, and Olympus. When I look at GI, it's Olympus, Pentax, and Fuji. When you look at orthopedics, it's Smith & Nephew, Stryker, and Arthrex. It's the same few companies, only a few, and each one that really has the capital equipment and the scopes. So the thought is, if we're going to go build a robot and we do a great job with it, even if it does completely autonomous surgeries, and I go out in 5 years and have 5% or 7% of the market, and we're all high-fiving each other and chest bumping and really excited, that's 5 or 7% of a market. Whereas if we have a technology that can fit with every single robot, every single scope, and they're all just carriers, and we want to enable each one of them to take advantage of their natural abilities and do more, we have a chance at 100% of the procedures to have active being part of every procedure. And to me, that was a better business model. And based on the science and the technology that we have, I believe we can influence more patients and lead to better patient outcomes.
No, that's a great point. And I've wondered about how this will all play out with the consolidation. And this is not, if you have a surgical robot of your own, if you have a Johnson & Johnson, Medtronic, whoever big company has their robot, they can't go on buying another surgical robot because the technology I wouldn't think would be compatible. It's not a typical kind of medical device sort of acquisition. So that makes a great deal of sense. So what is it then that you're making? Is it kind of an operating system for robotic surgery? It's
not just robotic surgery. It's basically what we have is we start with science, and it's multimodal technology that we can identify blood flow. To begin with, in a traditional path through multimodal light and intelligent light. It's wavelengths of light that are absorbed into the tissue, reflected back. At the end of the day, we can see things that today they have to inject dyes to visualize. So we can work with every single doctor on whether it's colorectal, bariatric, lap choles, procedures that you either need to visualize blood flow or perfusion data and tissue characterization, or you need to identify key critical structures. So we can do that first order of measure with no AI or anything like that. We have a small adapter that fits right onto existing scopes, right between the scope and the camera. And with the press of a button, you can now see things such as blood flow or perfusion data or critical critical structures that in the past or currently, if you use a traditional scope and you have a system that you want to visualize perfusion data or critical structures, you inject dye, you bring in a big system, and there's wonderful camera systems out there, another piece of capital to visualize that dye, which tells a doctor, here's some blood flow. But that's not real time, and that's not a seamless workflow. By the press of a button through heat map technology, we're just showing a physician, here's blood flow, here's not blood flow. Perfect example, Tom. If you came into our office and I brought you into the lab, I'd take your finger and I'd stick it right under our device that's hooked onto an existing scope, whether it's a Stryker, whether it's a Storz, the world leaders in laparoscopic technology. And I stick it right under their scope, and we would show you a heat map that shows you your whole finger where the blood is flowing. I'd stick a rubber band around the end of your finger, and immediately this heat map would show that you have no blood flow at the tip of your finger.
Wow.
I take the rubber band off, and immediately it would fill up again. There's no system in medical intraoperatively that can do that. Now that's step one. So now the fun starts, and now we get into what we're called our active insights. And with our insights, as soon as that procedure is over, all of the data, the surgical data, HIPAA compliant, is collected. It's sent to the cloud. It's stored in the cloud, and it's basically we're building the world's first networked surgical platform. And basically, we're continuously updating the cloud. And as we expand, we call it the Active Edge platform, and it becomes more intelligent. We have we're basically inferencing on the edge. We're going to get data from doctors all over the world that can be delivered to any specific surgeon in any surgery anywhere when they're using this little active site image module. And what that means is we'll be transforming massive amounts of data. It's gathered intraoperatively, and it helps characterize tissue and key critical structures. So best way to say it, and if for those that aren't medical, and we are medical, but the easiest way I look at it is, think of when Garmin or GPS first came out, and they would tell you that, hey, Tom, you're from where you are now, you're 40 miles from Logan Airport. Okay, great. That's the shortest distance from where you live to Logan. Waze came out and says, you know what? I'm not going to take you 40 miles to Logan. I'm actually going to take you 50 miles to Logan, but I'm going to save you 45 minutes, because what you can't see and what I can see through my crowdsourced information is there's an accident the way we're going the shortest distance. There's construction, there's road problems, what have you. What we're doing at Active is, besides helping the physicians in that first order of measure in those procedures with blood flow, we help them right away. They can see things they can't see. The data collection, we are going to be that Waze. We are going to show them things, key critical structures. There's an organ right there. There's the cystic artery, the cystic duct. This is a vein versus artery. Here's the nerve, things that you can't identify, but through AI and through crowdsourced data sets with experts all over the world, we're able to feed that information in real time on the operating room screen, not all the data that's being collected pre-op, but on the operating room, right there on the screen, on the monitor that the surgeon is looking at. So whether you're in, whatever country you're in, if you do a ton of procedures in the middle of Boston and you do 500 of a certain type of procedure a year, or you're in the middle of the suburbs or another country and you do 5 procedures a year, every patient should have the confidence that their surgeon has the same exact information to make key critical decisions. And that's what we're going to do.
So first question, I'll ask my second question first. How, if I'm a surgical patient in Boston and I undergo an appendectomy and this is used on me and you've collected all the data, assuming that's an applicable procedure, how is my appendectomy relevant to someone else's? What is consolidating all that data? How does that inform the surgeon for the next procedure they do? Well,
the nice thing about whatever the procedure is, an appendectomy, a colorectal procedure, let's say a lap chole, again, just removing a gallbladder.
Yep.
After every procedure, we have a proprietary annotation model, and we can truly label a 1-hour surgical video, step-by-step, ground truth data. That's a surgeon. So basically, Tom, every case, if you can have a surgeon that can identify and label right there in that spot, based on what I see right there, that's a cystic artery. That's a cystic duct. That is, they're identifying key landmarks and landmines. And then if you have what's called true ground truth data, and you know that they're experts and that really is a nerve, okay, then we start training the model, and the model is being trained each time a doctor is labeling through our annotation and a proprietary annotation. We're labeling, and that's a nerve, that's a nerve, that's a nerve. Now we've done hundreds of procedures that we've labeled, and through our crowdsourced data, we know what the nerve is. We know exactly where the nerve is. We know where the critical view of safety is. And so it's basically through our proprietary data set. It's of anatomical data correlated through surgical video. It allows us to develop the artificial intelligence capabilities to then bring this back to live surgery. And here's the example. Because we're hardware agnostic, and when I sit down and look at the fact that we can fit on any single scope or any single robot, that reduces what's called data bias. And when you're using when one company is collecting data using their system, there's a natural bias. It's a leading cause of reduced accuracy. But because we're working with every system, and then we have this proprietary annotation model, and I'm going to try to do this simple. And if it makes sense to me, who's not a scientist, hopefully it makes sense to anybody, because a 1 hour surgical video has 216,000 frames. And the reason I know that is the math that I've learned is there's 60 frames per second, 60 seconds a minute, 60 minutes an hour. There is no doctor in the world that labels frame by frame of a 1 hour surgical video. So the largest annotated, which is just labeled, we're just labeling them, annotated surgical video sets are about 100 to 150 data sets of annotated surgical video, meaning truly labeled, but nobody is labeling frame by frame. And here's why. We did a 10-week vessel annotation model over a year ago. And the first model, it took about 10 minutes to annotate one frame. If you annotate one single frame times 216,000, it would have taken us 4 years to truly label or annotate a 1 hour surgical video. Over 10-week time and training the models, we got that down to 3 minutes a frame, still not scalable. Today, it's 3 milliseconds a frame through our annotation and through our proprietary autonomous annotation model. We can annotate frame by frame a 1 hour surgical video in 10.8 minutes. So what we can hopefully do is deliver real accurate information in the operating room.
So how is that information being used by the surgeon? Are they looking through goggles? Do they have another screen in front of them? What is the interface?
The interface is right on the screen that they're using. I mean, the monitor that they're watching, because our active site image module, it fits right between the existing scope and a camera, whether it's robotics, whether it's laparoscopic or what have you. And those physicians are watching a monitor. We have a small light engine for our software and our imaging that goes on the tower as well. But when you're using a Karl Storz system or a CMR system in robotics, we're not interfering with when you're using their system, use their system. When you press the button on our active site image module to see perfusion data or overlay or to start getting insights, then our system takes over, but it doesn't interfere with their system, but you're watching it on the same exact screen. So all of a sudden on the screen, you're going to know those key landmines and landmarks. Up ahead, like I said, that is a vein, that's an artery. And a lot of that can be told by blood flow. We're able to tell a physician on the screen, there's something called the critical view of safety. And it's just identifying key landmines and landmarks that you want to stay away from. Common bile duct injuries cost the U.S. healthcare system over $1 billion every year. Wow. And that's done during a laparoscopic cholecystectomy, the most common laparoscopic procedure. But they're not that common. It's still under 1% have common bile duct injuries, yet it's over $1 billion. It's preventable if you can see the critical view of safety. And that's some of the AI and some of the data that we're going to be providing our physicians right on the screen. We're telling them that's the critical view of safety. That's your cystic artery. There's your cystic duct. It's clearly marked, so you know to stay away from it. So
to follow the Waze analogy, you're giving the little kind of up ahead. There's a car on the side of the road. There's a pothole over here.
Yeah. Exactly. And the story that I would say that sets this up is if you think about the autonomous car world. Not everyone's ready for an autonomous car today, but cars have been around since 1912 or whenever they were, they were invented. But in your car and in my car, for the last 15 years, we've had a rear view camera. And that just provides data to the driver to help make decisions. We've had in our side view mirrors now, there's little orange lights or red lights to show if someone's in your blind spot. If you switch lanes by mistake and you're not planning to, your seat or your steering wheel may vibrate. You don't need an autonomous car for that. That's just more data for the driver. And that's why before we go completely to autonomous robotics, we're trying to just give more data to the surgeon in a traditional laparoscopic procedure. The more information you have, everybody starts getting on an equal playing field, and then we're truly democratizing surgery. Because at the end of the day, there's a shortage of surgeons in the world. There's about 140 million surgical procedures that could be done that don't have surgeons ready to do them. So we want to make sure that anyone doing surgery, that's obviously a trained physician, has as much data as they can. Why shouldn't they have the experts standing over their shoulder live in a case? And it's crowdsourced data from all of these experts. But
I heard the record screech in my head at autonomous surgery. So is that the end game here? I mean, are we talking about the robotic surgeon we'll see in now sort of scenario?
Well, I don't think the surgeon, our intention of the autonomous robot, when we programmed it to do autonomous functions, it was to give a robot the opportunity to have certain decision-making capabilities to truly complement the surgeon. Surgeon should always be in the loop. This is not to replace a surgeon. I mean, there's certain areas of a surgery and all the advantages of robotics. We know that robots can reach things that surgeons' arms can't. They can get you places that a surgeon's arms can't. But at no time today does a robot make a decision without the surgeon guiding it, because the robot can't see something that the surgeon can't. And what ActiveSight is doing is we're allowing a system to identify and see things that aren't visible to a human today. So once a robot can start seeing things that humans can't, then the opportunity to take full advantage of all these robotic capabilities is going to go even farther. And the AI and the software, robotics has been a big hardware play for years, and devices, and understandably so. But it's moving more into the software and the true visualization. I mean, we want to make sure that a surgeon and a robot can see things. And just like a scope, we want to make sure it can see something that's not visible today. So then you can really take advantage of surgical skills.
That's very cool. Final question. You were talking about working across technologies, working with different companies, products. What kind of relationship do you need with those companies to have your guidance system offered on their products? Is this something that you need to go company by company, or is it something that can be layered on at the hospital, in the surgery room, without permission from the manufacturer of the other system?
So I think it's a very fair question. So the technology of ActiveSight, the first product that's already submitted to the FDA, the image module that attaches to between a scope and a camera, is not dependent on us working with another scope manufacturer. That's working with the hospitals, and that's based on technology. What we submitted to the FDA, we had approved certain things in non-inferiority. We're class 2, and our FDA submission is to fit seamlessly between the scope and the camera system, and that will be our FDA clearance. Now, with that said, we've built a model that we can go out and go to hospitals and sell this technology and bring this technology to ORs around the world on our own. And we have that plan. But we'll be better and stronger if we partner. And what I mean by that is every scope company, and again, I was the president of one of them. I was the president of one of the orthopedic ones. It just worked out that way. Every scope company knows us and knows the technology that we're working with. My belief is to have a tremendous relationship with all of them, and that's our goal, and I believe that's what we're doing. Similarly, with robots. With a scope, I can take a device and stick it right between a scope and a camera right now. If we start getting into certain code development opportunities with robotics, that would be working with manufacturers on code development. Can we take a device and stick it on? Yes. But is it the best way to do it with robotics? Probably not. And so the opportunity right now is we have partnership agreements, we have discussion agreements and projects that are going on with multiple companies across the industry, because we want to make every system better. We believe that the active inside model, if you will, like I said, every scope and robot is a carrier. Because we believe that we can make each of them better and let them focus on the things that make them great already. And they don't need to focus on these things. We're going to help deliver that to their systems and to the doctors, ultimately reducing complications and those preventable medical errors.
Are these companies working on their own similar platforms or similar systems internally that you're sort of competing against, or do you feel like you have some open field here?
Well, the nice thing is, and again, we're Active Surgical. They're big monster companies, and so to understand the landscape, and again, being on that side of the business for so long, I think I have a pretty good understanding. There's a lot of companies working on the science, whether it's multimodal technology and how do I see blood flow without any dyes, and how can I identify critical structures. That's all been out there for a long time. What we were able to do is come with a delivery system and a mechanism that actually puts us in the middle of a procedure in any system. So any hospital seamlessly doesn't have to buy anything new. They basically take this device and they attach it to their existing systems that they already have. Mm-hmm. So, and that is patented. So our IP around not only the device, but around the science of what's in this device has been a benefit to us. So the thought process, of course, companies can figure things out and work on. I'll never say a company's not. I think there's always competition, but at the end of the day, it's easier for a large company to look at a company that specializes in something and look at them as let them be my R&D arm, if you will, and let them continue to work on that. And we can partner and collaborate, and we'll see what happens over the long run. But so to ever say that someone is not doing it, no one else has a device that goes intraoperative on existing scopes yet. And now that's been patented. So that is our landscape. And we created that.
I just want to clarify, maybe I'm missing it, and I probably will hear it when I listen to the recording, but can the hospitals use your system if you don't have that previous relationship with the company? You mentioned that they could go right now, plug in your system, and it would work.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And part of our FDA clearance is identifying what systems, what scopes, where this works, what procedures, how it works. So yes, we can take, we know all the scope companies. And the reason I say that is most scopes and cameras are interchangeable to a point. Mm-hmm. You know, I worked for a scope manufacturer. You could fit someone else's. I've seen it. Some hospitals grab one company's camera, someone else's scope, and they attach them together. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of attachments: a C-mount or a universal. It's a twist or a snap. I mean, it's not. And then in the science is in the magic of what's in your processor and all of that. But they're interchangeable already. Now, each company has tremendous advantages that they believe in and that physicians believe in. So they're very loyal to their device manufacturer. This is not taking away. This is just adding to that. I guess the best way, Tom, is, there's 2D, there's HD, there's 3D, there's 4K. Those are all enhancements to what you can already see. So imagine you're watching television, and those just make the picture that much clearer. Mm-hmm. They bring things to light. Active sight is something that you can't see that now you can see. And that's something, so it's not enhancing what you can see. So we want to take the best of all of those scopes and robots and all those companies, and we want to enhance what you can see and offer them more opportunities to do more things. We need them. We believe in every one of those companies. I don't have a favorite. I root for them all. I root for every single robotic company to be great. And they all have advantages. And the fact is, we believe we can sit right on top of each one of them and work with them to bring the best for the doctors.
That's fantastic.
But we don't. And we can go into a hospital today, and it's the hospital's decision whether they use active sight versus the manufacturer of a scope.
And your value add for that's great. Your value add for the hospital is you'll have fewer mistakes, less costs, and that's why we're worth the money.
Well, the goal is readmission rates are a major issue in hospitals. Yep. Anastomotic leaks, key critical structure damage. Those are things with today's technology can't always be identified. There's all the data is out there, and there's no reason you should ever close up a patient without pressing a button and making sure there's adequate blood flow. There's no anastomotic leak, or you've identified the key critical structures every time. And that's really the goal.
That's awesome. It's blown my mind a little bit. Thanks, Todd. This has been a great conversation.
Tom, I appreciate it. Thanks. I look forward to further discussions, and best of luck to you.
You too. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Todd Usen and Active Surgical. If you want to see more, you can join us on Device Talks Tuesdays. Todd will be a panelist this coming Tuesday on our discussion about AI and IP protection. Go to devicetalks.com to register. We have fun at Mass Device trying to remember the origins of the surgical robotic names. So I thought I'd make a little Jeopardy game out of it. Chris and Sean are great sports, and it's time to have a little fun. Sean, what pages are you leading the charge on here at WTWH?
So I still contribute to everything here and there, but mostly mass device, and then working a lot on drug delivery business and trying to get that one rolling.
People have no idea how many sites we have here covering the life sciences and medtech industry. So here he's doing good work. Is he doing good work, Chris Newmark?
And he's just rocking.
All right. Excellent. Well, hopefully you can win a little pretend money to have a good weekend here on Surgical Robot named Jeopardy. So Chris Newmarker, you won the coin toss.
Wait a second. This is pretend money? You're not giving us a prize?
No, it's real. I'll definitely cut you a check for sure. My people will call your people. Pick your category, Chris Newmarker. Actually, the category is the same. Surgical robot names. You can pick number. You can pick the dollar value, 500 to 100.
Oh, I'll start modestly. I will do surgical robotic names for 200.
So, Martin Scorsese directed a movie with this name, but the story had nothing to do with a kind-hearted ex-con who can't escape his past. What is the surgical robot system's name, and who makes it, Chris Newmarker?
Oh man, was this? Wow, is there like a Scorpio robot? Serpico? Oh man, this is like 1970s movies.
Sean Hooley, do you have a guess?
Is it Hugo?
Hugo!
200 for Sean Hooley. All right, Sean, you control the board. What dollar value would you like?
I might just quit now.
That happened on. Did you see on Jeopardy last night for Final Jeopardy? There were two contestants with $14,200 and one with $2,000. And Final Jeopardy, they all answered it incorrectly, but she bet zero. The other two bet all of their money, so she won.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
it threw me for a loop because I forgot that Scorsese did Hugo. I forgot that he did a kids.
I had no idea he did Hugo. So even you're better than I am for even forgetting it, for having the fact in the first place. Sean Hooley, what's your dollar number, man? You can't quit. You're in this.
Let's go for 300.
This robot name sometimes means 8, but musically it calls for 1 to elevate.
Oh, thankfully I know this one. What is Ottava, made by Johnson & Johnson, or just released or announced anyway?
Very good. All right. Pick your next dollar category.
Let's keep climbing the ladder. 400.
A surgical robot by any other name would smell as sweet. Also the first name of a 20th century civil rights hero. Sean, I know you weren't born in the 20th century, but maybe you were. I don't know. But do you know the name of this robot and who makes it?
Oh, boy. Drawing a blank. I'll let Chris go if he's got it.
I got it. It's the Rosa by Zimmer Biomed.
All right.
Rosa Parks, yeah.
So Sean has 500. Chris comes back with 400. Chris Newmarker, you control the board.
All right. Well, I think I'll head down to 100. I'll do 100.
All right. This robot didn't paint the Sistine Chapel either, but its namesake did capture a famous likeness of Lisa Garibaldi of Florence, Italy.
The Da Vinci robot by Intuitive, yep.
Oh, this is tied up. This is intense. 500 to 500. Chris Newmark, you're going to go for number 500 for the win?
Let's do it.
All right. You might not want to meet up with this robot at the beach, but it made a minimally access keyhole orthopedics possible.
Let me think. Well, I know the MAKO is the most from Stryker is the most popular robot. All right, I'll just say MAKO, the MAKO robot from Stryker.
Yes.
All right.
I actually had that if you would have passed it off to me. I swear.
I was almost like, this is too easy. The MAKO, really? That's what.
And I guess I had forgotten that MAKO stood for minimally access keyhole orthopedics. I'd forgotten, or I never knew it. I thought it was just a Florida fishing reference. So Chris Newmarker with the win. 1,000 sort of real dollars for you, sir.
Yeah.
Coming your way in your mass device check. Just check that mass device check.
I'll get an envelope with some Monopoly money, probably, right?
Now it's time for our closing keynote conversation. I had the chance to speak with Maurice Ferre. Maurice, of course, is the founder of MAKO Surgical, was involved in the decision to sell that to Stryker. We'll talk about that and many other things, including Memix, the company where he is now chair. But first, we're going to hear from our friends at Finnegan. Partner Arpita Pachada is going to talk to us about some overlooked patent protection techniques. Let's listen.
Medical device companies have traditionally focused on obtaining utility patents, which protect the way a device is used and works. Design patents, which protect the way an article looks, is often overlooked. But design patents can really help to strengthen your patent portfolio and give you a competitive edge, particularly against similar looking or knockoff competitor products. In addition to protecting the non-functional ornamental features of your medical device, a design patent can protect the look of graphical user interface or the design of replacement parts. So don't forget to add design patents into your toolkit for protecting your invention. Within the realm of utility patents, most medical device companies tend to put an emphasis on device claims that cover the physical elements or parts that form the invented medical device. But method claims, which cover the process of performing a procedure using the medical device, can also help to further protect your innovation. In fact, method claims can potentially provide a broader protection than device claims because they do not require a detailed structural recitation, which tends to narrow the scope of the claim. But method claims in the medical device field generally get a bad rep because nobody wants to sue the hospital or the physician who directly infringes the method claim by performing the claimed procedure. But remember that a competitor's device can indirectly infringe your method claims by inducing or contributing to the direct infringement of your method claim by the physician or clinician performing the procedure. So when it comes to enforcing your patent against a competitor's device, a broad, well-drafted method claim can really come in handy.
And if you want to learn more about our friends at Finnegan, go to finnegan.com. Well, Maurice Ferre, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tom. Pleasure to be on your Device Talks.
Great to have you. You wouldn't remember this, but we spoke many years ago at one of the AAOSs. I think it was just before the Stryker deal. So you must have been working on it while I was interviewing you for a magazine I was writing for. And of course, you were wise to keep it to yourself. But I remember at the time that I think it was a Canaccord Orthopedics meeting. They had sort of a debate, robotics versus customized implants and sort of which would be the future. And it's just remarkable to think at that time that it was still a question very much what you were working on and what MAKO was working on. We had Intuitive, but MAKO was kind of out there trying to get into the orthopedics field, which was so dominated by big players. I want to get into your history, but the question that's always sort of amazes me is like, what was the moment where you saw the technology for what it was and realized I need to build a company around this? And how do you get, if there was any sort of doubt, how did you sort of work through it or around it?
You know, it was two things that came together very, very closely. One was when I saw haptics as a light arm robot that was as light as a feather and can differentiate what the feeling is of a surgeon when he touches bone or whether he touches soft tissue. Mm-hmm. And that was like really unique. It's like, wow, how can somebody build this massive 800-pound robot? And then at the tip of it, it's like feather light. And it has these capabilities when you close your eyes of sensing different types of feelings. That was really important in terms of saying that when you go through keyhole procedures, and actually MAKO was minimally access keyhole orthopedics because that concept of, you know,
I thought it was a Florida thing. I thought you just liked fishing.
But so that concept of being able to do implants through small incisions was something that was very striking. And the fact that what you'd lose when you do small incisions is that sensation of touch. The surgeon loses that tactile capabilities. And very different from any other type of robot, this concept of bringing haptics was really kind of like a seminal moment and saying, wow, this really has some capabilities.
That's the tech, and that's a great story. But what about, I mean, how did you know you didn't have a hammer that was in search of a nail? Because there was so
I'll tell you
much.
The second part.
Okay, go ahead.
There were two parts to it. There were two revelations. The second one was meeting John Rapisi. And John Rapisi was an orthopedic surgeon, a dentist turned orthopedic surgeon up in Syracuse. Brilliant guy. And what he was doing was magic. He was using a drill to cut bone. And what was amazing was his frustration of when Biomed was out there kind of like, hey, this is a really cool idea. We can do these unis and, there's a real need for these, but they weren't reproducible at all, zero. So when we looked at early stage disease and we looked at unique compartmental disease, and it was a large part of the market and it wasn't well penetrated, we realized very quickly that you put a combination of this implant, unique compartmental, through in small incision with this haptic robot using navigation, and we built this in a streamlined fashion, that we were going to get a lot of attention. And then the idea was how to position this. I was Makoplasty. I wanted to get a word out there that people would say, just like kyphoplasty. And so Makoplasty became kind of the procedure name. And I went out to the community and just started just driving it and saying, hey, these, and a lot of it was, it's like, we don't do unique compartmentals. We do total knees. And that really built the market for us. That's when we kind of had the aha moment. Let's stay focused on that. And then, eventually we knew that we were going to do a tri-compartmental knee, and we wanted to build those out. So we realized a very important thing for us that we realized, Tom, is like we had an opportunity to go and say, hey, we're going to be the Switzerland of the world. We're going to let anybody's implant go in there. But I realized that if you do that, then you really lose a lot of value. And I said, I'm going to make my own implant. And that was like a bold statement for us to do. So we went off and it first started licensing, and then eventually building implants. And in fact, one of the guys that we worked with was Robert Cohen. He had a company called Pipeline that now Robert is head of R&D for Stryker. But we had built an amazing implant, which ended up being the total knee implant. And we worked with multiple partners. We worked with HSS and others to kind of help develop multiple implants. And a big part of our success was also to realize not only on the knee, but also on the hip. And, Larry Dorr was a giant in our industry who recently passed, was really very inspirational. He called me up and really got me excited. I wasn't going to do a hip, but when Larry called me up, he was very influencing. And I said, we're going to go ahead and do a hip.
Wow. So we've had Kevin Lobo from Stryker on the podcast, and I've talked to him about this on a few occasions. Just the time people question what Stryker was doing. You were out there, you were making progress, you're getting traction, but the acquisition caught many, including myself, by surprise. And I asked him how he sort of got comfortable with the gamble, and he said, look, this was a big deal, but it wasn't going to crush us if it didn't work. And I was seeing numbers that really made me excited about it, so it made sense, and it worked out, obviously. I've often wondered from your perspective, did you have any doubt about selling, or did you really kind of want to build a bigger company that was much more than just, well, you're obviously moving into areas outside of the knee, but did you have any doubts about selling, or does $1.5 billion kind of put those doubts away?
I guess the way I would answer that is, we didn't sell the company. The company was bought, right? And there's a very different mindset in building companies. When we were out there strategizing, working with the team and doing what we were doing, it was all in. It's like, we're building a great company here. But, there comes a moment where when Kevin flew down, I was actually with my son fishing, and it was an August day, and Kevin calls me up and says, hey, I want to talk to you. I want to partner with you. And I said, well, that's interesting. So, what I found most amazing, it was just Kevin. So I go over, and he goes, let's have a dinner. And I took him over to Key Biscayne. We went to the Grand Bay Club, and there was nobody there in the whole dining room, and we had a beautiful view of the beach, and we had a great conversation. And Kevin was at the end kind of said, what really this comes down to is I'd really like to buy you, and I think that started the process. It came to a point where I wanted to make sure, because I had lived this before when I sold my first company to GE, that it just was so poorly handled. And I wanted to make sure that I was leaving this in good hands. And And I really felt like this was going to be the best thing for patients and to do this right. And it became evident that, we were kind of like an adolescent and we were growing up, and Stryker was the logical next step to take this to the next level. And it was really the commitment, the fact that we kept the team. He kept the full team here. Kevin's doubled down, built a massive facility here. Thousands of employees are down here in South Florida as a result of it. It's created a massive ecosystem of opportunities and growth. And people within the organization have grown, and it's become a key part of the thesis. And I give Kevin a lot of kudos. At the moment, I know, he said to me something really interesting. He goes, Maurice, I'll bet my job on this, but I'm not going to bet the company. So I'll go up to your price of $1.65 billion at the time, which was 17 times revenues, where we were losing $30-40 million a year. And, we had a model. We could have kept on going. And, it was a very contentious discussion at the board level. And there were some that were looking at this and saying, we're leaving a lot of money on the table. And there were others who saying, wow, this is pretty remarkable. But I think all in all, if I look at the scope of it and everybody, from the street level to the employees to patients, I think it was the right thing to do. And look where we are today. Look at how robotics has become front stage, in massive. I'm still shocked by all the analysts, 7 years out that, the first part of the story is utilization on MAKO system. Pretty amazing.
It is. No, it really is how quickly it's developed. And I want to kind of get your perspective on the robotics industry in a second, but your point about Stryker doubling down on South Florida. I mean, your dad was mayor of Miami for 12 years and very well known. You must carry that sort of love of the area and desire to do well for the area as well.
It's funny. We just had the Mayor Francis Suarez here in our office, and there's so much going on right now in South Florida and Miami in particular about a tweet that he said, "How can I help?" And basically, there's a convergence of San Francisco tech people and New York hedge funds coming all to Miami, right? During this COVID environment, and they're realizing that, hey, I can have a good quality of life and have a great job. And, there's no taxes here as a state level, and it's a great place to live. And I think one of the interesting things is building, high paying jobs in the tech field. And I'm really proud that MAKO is the antithesis of MAKO has resulted in over 5,000 jobs. And about $4 or $5 billion of economy coming into the system, where you have a lot of engineers from our current schools, where we were recruiting at MAKO enormously, but we're seeing also, people coming back. Mm-hmm. So there's a workforce that's coming back. And I think, in the South Florida environment, that plays really well. And MAKO is a great story of a success story of how they've doubled down and it's become significant. So as it triangulates on a personal side, I'm very proud of it because I know that's something that my father worked really hard on in making Miami a great city. And
that's great. And I won't belabor this anymore, but I also had read that you had at least one term sheet that wanted you to move the company to the Bay Area at the time when you were private. So
you did. Bob, you've done your homework. And we had Canada. Canada wanted us to move the company. They were going to pay me like $50 million to move the company.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's a big change from Miami to Canada.
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
So I would love your perspective then on sort of where we are, and we can start talking about where Memix sort of fits into this. But are we at a point where there's like a next generation of surgical robotics? I mean, now it seems like we've moved even beyond using the term surgical robotics. Now everyone's talking about digital surgery, because there's more to it than just robotic technology to it. But how do you see it? Do you still see this as surgical robotics, or do you see this now as being digital surgery that is part of something much larger?
I totally buy into digital surgery. I think the world of how we're going to see surgery being performed or just certain procedures being performed are changing dramatically on a lot of different fronts. It's not just mechanical. It's really become chemical. It's become delivery of systems. And, I'm honored now, after a 6-month hiatus, I jumped back into the bandwagon and running Insight Tech, which is an amazing company that's using MR guided focus ultrasound. It's an infinite degree of freedom of energy sources going inside the body, which makes it incisionless, and it's performing all these different types of procedures. And we've identified about 67 different types of indications. But what's really neat, and what I'm seeing what's happening, is through digitization, through energy sources, through infinite degree of freedoms, you can manipulate at the cellular level certain activities and stimulate certain activities. And as we get smarter and smarter about this, I think you're going to start seeing this type of Star Trekian type of procedures being done. And I think this is just the forefront of it. So I got really excited about seeing this whole new platform, which we call the fourth wave, going after robotics, where you have early open incisions, minimally invasive robotics. And now I think with using focus ultrasound and energy levels intraoperatively, where you're inside the MR, you're seeing real time. So, I mean, that's like one level of and that's good. I think over the next 10, 20 years, you're going to see a lot of stuff going on in that field, and the dynamics of it, the number of citations that are being out there, there was a big piece on the Center of Nature that was all about focus ultrasound and drug deliveries and opening up the blood-brain barrier for a short period of time so you can deliver cells and gene therapy. That's like one level that becomes really digital, which goes way beyond just a mechanical robot. But in just the field of where we are, I think we're getting smarter. I think we're starting to understand additional needs in the market, right? So, for example, Memix is a great example of, I think, the next generation robots that are coming in that are absolutely looking at footprint, looking at cost, and looking at new efficiencies that are enabling them to work in the ambulatory surgery center. It's like we need to lower the cost of healthcare. Healthcare is out of control. So does it make sense to have a multi-million-dollar robot doing all these type of procedures? Maybe it might make sense to have a lower cost solution that's not working in the hospital, but affordable, working in ambulatory surgery centers that are more outpatient type procedures that can take advantage of robotics. And I think that the form factor of these type of new generation robots, and specifically Memix, I think, because I don't think we need another Me Too. I don't think we need another Da Vinci, right? I think when I look at all the other technologies that are out there that are being developed, I don't think that that's going to be in the playing field. Intuitive is just going to eat them for lunch. I mean, they have the market share, the lion's share. For whatever reason, they have created this huge moat. And no one's come close. And people have tried and it hasn't succeeded. So I think you have to do a paradigm shift. I think you have to build a new model that shows how these robots are going to be delivered. And I think there's going to be a lot of new advancements going on the imaging side, on the capabilities of I mentioned haptics. I think haptics is going to come into the equation. And there's billions and billions of dollars of people working in this, some failing. If I look at specifically some of the initiatives that have taken place from Google, for example, Verb, I mean, that was a failure. These are people that think they know this field, and it just doesn't work that way. I think you really need people who really understand what the needs are from the physician's perspective, and that's what Memix done. What I really like about it is that they're focused, just like we were at MAKO focused on the unicondylar knee. And looking at that as a market, I see Memix doing the same thing. Memix is using its platform to go after GYN on a transvaginal approach, which is very, very unique. The market is asking for that. It's just been very difficult to perform that type of procedure. And the fact that these instruments do a retroflex, and they have the type of tension and the torque that's necessary to do these type of procedures, and it brings a very common sense approach, is really critical.
So Memix got FDA de novo marketing authorization for its Hominis system.
Yeah, big move by the FDA. This is the first one. This is the first one from the FDA on this new category.
The new category being the transvaginal or the type of technology that...
I think the FDA has sent a message to the industry at large that 510Ks are off the table now. And now you have to go de novo. For Tom, for the reason that we've all realized that there's a lot more to this technology. There's the information, how the information is being transferred, the AI of it. And I think that the FDA is rightfully so, kind of like really carefully been methodical about how the new range of robots need to be regulated. And it's this was a major, massive 2-3 year undertaking. And I think that the FDA is now going to hold everybody to this new standard. And they were very careful, and they were very thoughtful in the process of how this was. A lot of debate of whether these should all be PMAs, and I think they managed it well. And Memix the first one to come out, so it'll be interesting.
Well, let's first just a little more detail on what Memix is able to do. Is it making a procedure, creating the opportunity to do a new procedure this way, or is it, as MAKO did, allowing surgeons to do procedures they already do in a more efficient technical way?
Well, I think the procedures, the first targets are hysterectomies.
Yeah.
So these are procedures that are normally done. You want to give the what's really, I think, unique about this is you want to be able. They're in the literature. Doing transvaginal approaches has been the way, the choice that a lot of surgeons have wanted to do, but it's been very challenging to do with instrumentation. Just similar like the Rapisi story, very, very challenging. And why transvaginal? Well, some part of it is women don't want to have incisions.
Sure.
There's certain sets of that, right? And if you can do this in that type of approach, there's a real appeal from the patient's perspective, but also you want to have good results, and that's the key. Is that I think Memix been able to demonstrate that creating this type of robotic system that has this capability of the instruments coming in and retrograding or kind of converting and doing like a 180. And then you have an image that's coming in from the top, and the system in terms of where the manipulators that the surgeons are holding on to, and they're acting, they're mimicking the body parts. They're mimicking your motion of your shoulders, of your elbows, of your wrists in a very, I should say, intuitive way, but not intuitive. But,
not trademarked. Lowercase I, yes. Yeah.
Lowercase I. I think that's the way to look at it. And I think that's when you put your hands on the system, it's like, oh my gosh, never seen anything like this.
It's interesting. You were earlier hearing you talk about cost, because MAKO was one of the criticisms was that it added to the cost, that it wasn't a necessary piece of equipment, that hospitals were buying it for marketing purposes. I wonder how that sat with you, and I wonder also how do you make the argument for value with this next generation of robotic technology?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I really think is critical, and I've seen I work in the prostate area as well, so I know. And we've seen in the advancements of both the Da Vinci and the MAKO system that there wasn't hard data, and it was, I would say, yes, it was very market driven. But I think those times are changing. I think now more and more there's more rigor and need for data and evidence that you're really doing something. And part of the challenge is when you look at like unicompartmental needs, what we don't measure is the fact that we have a bunch of patients that are out there that don't have a full-blown total knee, right? And it's a quality of life issue, and it's also a cost issue. But those aren't being measured. And I think over time, I knew that in MAKO's case, that would eventually come up, and it will. Mm-hmm. And there's data that's starting to support the cost element of this stuff. But remember, some of these costs, it's like, well, does this require, if you're doing a partial, you got to buy this robot, and that's the way to do it. Are you better off than seeing some of the infection rates and the complications? that occur with total knee. Those were those type of discussions that were taking place. I think that in the across general surgery, I mean, it's clear that there's a lot of effort on the marketing side. I think that we're moving more and more towards these economic studies. And, one of the things, for example, here that I'm doing at Insight Tech is level 1 studies, where I think you've got to do randomized controlled trials. You've got to get the data. And it's a big investment. It's a huge investment. It takes 5 to 6 years to really collect the data. You have to power it up properly. And I think you're going to see more and more of that coming across the board. Because that's how you really create, you really get the appreciation for value. I think the marketing piece and the sizzle of that is going to be less and less effective as a device company, and you really are going to have to go back to the hard work of collecting real hard data.
I'd love to know how you sort of see this playing out. I mean, we have Johnson & Johnson has Ottava and Medtronic has Hugo. And of course, we talked about Intuitive already. Everyone's getting their robotic system. There's dozens of startups, smaller companies with robotic systems. I think you mentioned at the top that you didn't want to do Me Too, but we are certainly getting in a space where it's getting very crowded for surgical robotics. How do you sort of see this all play out?
Well, Tom, we're going to see, but I'll go back to the thesis that you have something simple and you have something reliable, and I think with a low footprint, and I think it's a business buster. I think it busts the business model of high cost capital equipment. Huge amount of effort is being put into there. I think this theme is overplayed, but it's going to be the democratization of robotics. I kind of say Memix the closest thing to a disposable robot, and I think that is if I were J&J and I were Medtronic, who by the way haven't put their robots out there because they're still out there, right? Look at the costs that they're going to have to incur and how it's going to show up on their financials just to get up to a level. I mean, it's going to be massive for them to be effective, right? There's massive costs, the cost of these equipment, the setup, the cost of the infrastructure. But what Memix provides is a very, very elegant, what will be kind of a low-cost solution, which is addressing the needs of what the market's asking for. When I talk to the IDNs of the world, the big hospital systems, they don't want to deal more with like another big robot sitting in the hallways. They're running out of space. And the costs associated, the service contracts, this and that, the disposable costs, all these things are real. And I think without, we've got to get our costs down. And I think Memix really is addressing that part of the market. And it's gonna make their job a lot more difficult.
Well, great thoughts. It's great to reconnect with you. I enjoyed talking to you back at AAOS. Back when.
Likewise. Thanks for reminiscing. I just want to put a big plug out there for all those folks out there that remember Larry Dorr. Larry Dorr was a giant in this industry. Our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family. And he was very monumental in the orthopedic space and a true believer in robotics, which at the time, a lot of people didn't believe in it. And Larry was out there front and center. God bless Larry.
Thank you for making sure we all know that. So appreciate the time, Maurice. All right, great. Well, now is the time we beg for connection on social media. Chris Newmarker, you have been on fire this week on LinkedIn with your Jeff Martha post. It was insane. My notifications on LinkedIn app were off the chain, as they say.
It's off the chain.
So. You folks who aren't connected to Chris Newmarker are missing quite the show. How can they find you, Chris Newmarker?
I'm always open to connections, always interested in hearing about story pitches. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker. And I'm also on Twitter at Newmarker.
Sean Hooley, where can we find you on the social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Sean Hooley WTWH, and that's SEAN. It is March after all, almost St. Patrick's Day. It's the Irish spelling. And then we got WHOOLEY and the same spelling on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect.
Excellent. And Chris Newmarker, I think you missed a tag, didn't you? Aren't you a member of a new social media application, as they say.
Somebody who is probably you invited me to join Clubhouse, so I am on Clubhouse and tentatively kind of checking it out. But it definitely seems to be a lot of discussions going on there. I saw that you participated in one on Clubhouse today. I
did. I was on a discussion called with Giovanni Lorcella of and Aaron Green of the Mullings Group, and we talked about fundraising, which was kind of fun. It was good to be a kind of a panel/panelist kind of moderator sort of thing. So it was neat. And we did I did my first Clubhouse room on Monday. It was at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to do it again. So this Monday at 5:30 p.m., we'll have, for any West Wing fans out there, you'll appreciate the name, Device Walk and Talks, where
nice.
I'll take a walk with my phone and my Beats Bluetooth, and we can talk about the podcast. So we can talk about the guests that were on there, the themes, but of course we can talk anything Medtech. So you folks can find it on Clubhouse, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Chris Newmarker's normally picking up little Newmarkers at that time, but we'll certainly try to have other folks on the program as well. And we'll definitely be doing some more as well, because I'm annoying about this, and I'm going to make Chris and Sean do that as well as this podcast. So you can also find me on LinkedIn. My name is Tom Salemi, Salemi. And I am on Twitter at MedTechTom. All right, folks. Well, that is a wrap. Once again, thank you for joining us on this really lengthy podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with your friends if you did, or even if you didn't. Please do, if you'd care to, give us a ranking, but we know no one ever does that. But it's always, again, nice to get an attaboy from time to time. And finally, tune in next week. We'll have another great episode of the DeviceTalks Weekly Podcast waiting for you.
See you soon.